the western part of Utah and then the eastern part of what we now know as Nevada. But they never actually made it out to the west coast. But what they would start to establish would eventually be known as the Old Spanish Trail. Very famous way to get from the east coast out to the west coast. Now, as I said, the two padres never made it all the way out to the west coast. It would be actually a secondary expedition launched in 1829 by an explorer by the name of Antonio Armijo. And he and his 60 explorers would actually push all the way out to the west coast and complete what would be known as the Old Spanish Trail. Now, when they got to this valley, it would be one of the guides from the Armijo expedition. His name was Diego Rivera. And Diego Rivera would mark on a map that he had to original road that the people that worked on the dam would come down in the 1930s to get to the dam. Now, if you came down here in the 1930s, this was not paved, it was a gravel road, and there were no guardrails. Now, when the workers would come down, and I always kind of remind people this was 1930s technology, so they had these great big flatbed trucks, and they would bring 150 workers at a time down on these double-decker flatbed trucks. And I always think of what it must have been like to be on the top deck, shoulder to shoulder with your best friend headed to work. Coming down this road, and if you look off to the right, what it must have been like to be standing on there in that gravel road with no guardrails there looking down.
You'd hope the driver wasn't drunk.
And you'd hope that the driver was in good facility, yeah, or good faculty. As I come around this bend, if you look off on the right-hand side, you'll see that road goes all the way down the canyon there. That's called the Portal Road, and that was the road they would take all the way down to the base of the dam when they were working on it. Now, after 9/11, it was determined that Hoover Dam was a very high-risk target. So it is now one of the most secure places that you will ever visit. It has almost the same level of security as the White House in Washington, D.C. And we are about to go through a security checkpoint. Now, I have good news. You don't have to do anything. They see me with great regularity down here. But when I get down here, I'm going to open up all the doors. They're going to poke your head in and say good morning. And they always appreciate it if you say good morning back. So if you'll please excuse me, I'll be right back. The other thing here is they produce hydroelectricity, a lot of it. There's 17 generators down at the base of the dam. Now the question I always like to ask my guests when we're on tour is, if you haven't been here, has anybody been to the dam before?
Yes.
Okay, then you can't answer this. How much of Las Vegas's electricity do you think we get from the dam?
20%.
20%. That's a good guess. It's almost a trick question, because when they built Hoover Dam, Las Vegas was this little postage stamp of a place out in the desert. And as a consequence of that, when they created the dam, all of the infrastructure that they built for it takes all this electricity down to Southern California and Arizona. We only get about 7 or 8% of our electricity from the dam. Now you might wonder, where the heck do we get our electricity from then? And if you go north of Las Vegas, if you were headed up towards Zion and Bryce, there are 3 massive electrical plants up there, and a combination of solar electricity now, as well as burning natural gas. That's where our electricity comes from. Now if you look off on our left, this is our first view of this spectacular Hoover Dam. This is an Art Deco style dam built between 1931 and 1935. Then as I come around the bend again, we're going to get our first view of the Mike O'Callahan Pat Tillman Memorial Bridge. That's Interstate 11 and now bypasses the dam. Now this is the second highest arched bridge in the United States, since it's 900 feet over the top of the Colorado River. Now when I have people that are in the concrete industry or engineers, they swoon over this bridge because this is called a continuous pour arch. That means they built the mold, filled it with concrete, then they extended the mold. So when you look at the arch, there's no seam in it, and it makes it very unique. Now, Hoover Dam's a beautiful place down here. The dam has 3,250,000 yards of concrete in it. And this is an elliptical dam. And what that means is, if you see that curvature in the dam, the water behind the dam, the weight of the water is actually diffused into the sides of the canyon, and that's what holds the dam and the water in place. Now these 4 towers that you see out in the water here on the left-hand side, these are called the intake towers. And virtually all of the water that comes down through the Colorado River system, as it comes down through and over by the dam, goes down through those 4 towers, and then is channeled down into the generator room down below, and then it continues on its course down the Colorado River. Now, it was never intended that water should actually flow over the top of the dam. So on both sides of the dam, you'll see these great big cement culverts over there. Those are called the spillways. And then there are 2 massive tunnels off the spillways that will divert any excess water that if the lake gets too full. Now as you look out onto the lake side, you'll notice this white band. That's called calcium carbonate. If you have hard water at home, it's the same minerals that will cause that deposit. Now on initial look, you'll look at the lake and think, oh my gosh, that lake is so low. And the truth of the matter is that the dam here has only been completely full twice. Once was in 1941, and they filled the dam to capacity to make sure that all of the mechanisms worked here well. The second time was 1983, and then they had a series of winters up in the Colorado Rockies that actually filled all 4 of these lakes for flood control to capacity. Now we are on the Arizona side of the dam. Welcome to Arizona.
sweep. That's sweep.
It's on. It's on.
Oh, it's also okay. Right.
Any of it. It's almost 100 years old. And I always kind of, when I put that in context and I think about buildings that they put up today, it seems like 10 years later they're either falling down or they've got cracks. And they manufactured all the concrete right here at the dam site. And it has things like these beautiful brass doors and terrazzo tile floors. On the other side of the dam here, you'll see these two statues and the flag. And that is the dedication area for the dam. Now those two statues are called the winged figures of the Republic. They were actually some of the largest then and even now bronze castings ever made. They each weigh about 3.5 tons. When they put the statues in, they actually put them on blocks of ice and melted them into place so they wouldn't harm the rock underneath them. Now if you come to the dedication area, you'll find this large terrazzo tile floor. And embedded in that floor, you would find 209 little brass discs, kind of randomly placed. And what those discs are is this. If you came to the dedication of the dam was dedicated on September 30th, 1935 at 9 o'clock at night by President Roosevelt. And if you were here for the dedication ceremony, and you gazed into the night sky directly above the flagpole, those 209 little brass discs are an exact map of every star that was visible in the sky at that moment in time. And the idea was if somebody came here 2,000 years from now and they couldn't figure out anything else about the culture that actually constructed this dam, if they could figure out the star map, they would know when it came into being. Yeah, as I said, there are things incorporated into here that are just stunning. You know, a lot of brilliance came into this thing.
About 5 or 6 miles, we'll see a little section of it at a place called Willow Beach. Yeah, during the summertime when we do get a little bit of rain in our monsoon season, sometimes the higher altitudes will get a bunch of rain, but the lower altitudes don't get rain directly. And that rain can evaporate before it hits the ground, which is a phenomenon called virga. It's spelled V-I-R-G-A, virga. That's why you don't see much in the way of vegetation. When we get to higher altitudes, a little bit later on today, we'll start to notice more and more in the way of vegetation. And by the time we get to Williams, Arizona, and certainly the South Rim, we'll see an awful lot of pretty big trees too. Of course, we'll be outside of the Mojave Desert at that point in time, but still, here in the west, the higher altitudes are typically cooler and get more in the way of precipitation than the lower altitudes do. If you notice, there's no development out here other than the roadway that we're on and a couple of utility poles. That's because we're in what's called the Lake Mead National Recreation Area, which is 1.5 million acres of land set aside around Lake Mead and both sides of the Colorado River from Hoover Dam down to Davis Dam in Laughlin, set aside for recreational purposes. In some areas you can go hiking or maybe even off-road biking on trails around the lake and both sides of the river. Some places you can go camping also. On the river and the lake you can go boating, fishing, swimming, and other water sports like scuba diving. Although on the river it's not really suggested because there is a flow to it. Lake Mead, there's also a bit of a flow, but you really don't notice that, I guess. I've never gone scuba diving, but the water is very cold. It is all melted snow. I don't know if Peter told you all about the Colorado River, and that it's made of melted snow, and so it retains its chill.
Ja, dat is cool.
Over 10 kilometer
No, there's a place there.
Is that water coming down there? I'm looking at
Water.
I'm looking at the reflection in there.
There's water. Full of rain.
But not a.
You sound like my
a waterfall. Hello.
There might be a waterfall over there. There's enough rain. Could be. And what look like holes down there in the canyon, those are just indentations from exfoliation. The water gets into the rock, the melted snow or rain, it freezes, it expands into ice and creates weakness against the limestone. When it's raining, that's called the Writing Gorge Trail. Writing Gorge, the North Kayak Trail goes up through there, up to the North Rim. It's about 10 miles across from through there, and that's about 1,000 feet higher than us. We're at the top of the hill. Any idea what causes the red color in the rock?
Right there, it's like light color. It's going down, has bumps on it.
I have no idea. Hopefully the sun comes out.
That'd be nice.
Don't come here during monsoon season. It sucks. Wear your gear will get wet. never stop.
Yeah, there it is. I think that's his. Maybe not.
Yeah, our solar power only works for a day.
Right. You learn to do wash in the morning, get it done before 5.
Let's see, we put the
Old Bee House.
Yeah, because look, there's a beach. You can't see the beach. That's the there's a so this whole thing is going to have no, it's on your map.
God's light up there. You see it coming down there. Whether you believe in him or not, he's real. He believes in you. See this guy over here? It's the white truck and the camper. He has